Mr. Krayden, good night. How you doing?
Good. Nice to be back with you, Nico, on the Conservative Corner,
It's not a
which is
bad name,
gaining an
huh?
audience. Yeah, I think it's a great name.
Yeah, I think so
It's a
too.
great
Not
name.
to brag not to toot my own horn there, but yeah, it's not a bad name. So, what's been going on with you over the past week?
I better get my head in the picture here. There we go. Well, I've been very, very busy with a number of projects that I've been following, and the first of them, which I was a couple days late on because I was doing other things, but it's this insanity coming out of Atlantic, Canada. I think something you wanted to talk about anyway.
Mhm.
Might as well start with it. And what started with a ban on fires in public parks and Crown land escalated to a ban on hiking or any activities on this Crown land. And I've seen so many videos, including the military veteran who actually intentionally got the $25,000 fine for violating this insanity. He shows you the difference between the safe areas and the unsafe areas, and they both look exactly the same. So I'm thinking the world is going nuts, but Canada is going faster in that direction than any other country, save I think the United Kingdom, which is probably descending in the hell even faster than Canada is with its craziness, its legislation. But I've spent a lot of time researching exactly how Canada has responded to this wildfire threat. And of course, as you know, Nico, every time there's a wildfire, the media instinctively will say, oh, of course, it's climate change. And the Liberal government will always say, especially if the House is sitting, this is more evidence of climate change without any evidence at all. Just simply to say, well, it's the science. And Dr. Science says so. And you're just going to have to accept that. But in the research I did this week, I discovered that Canada and only 10 out of 12 provinces have devoted less money to wildfires in the last year than they did previously. Not only that, they have completely ignored the fact that the overwhelming majority of wildfires are caused by arson. And if you don't believe that, just look at the police blotter in various Saskatchewan, Alberta, Nova Scotia, Ontario, towns that were affected by wildfires in the last couple of years. And there's always an arsonist accused in every situation. In other cases, it's lightning.
Yep.
But none of it can be linked definitively to climate change. This is a narrative the government wants us to accept and to applaud, but they can't provide a shred of evidence. In fact, all of the evidence demonstrates the opposite, that it's not climate change. It's being created. Yeah, there you go. I use this one today. It's being created by arsonists, and it's just got nothing to do with climate change. And it's absolutely astounding. And I ask the audience, if the government really thought this was a serious threat, why aren't they devoting more finances, more funding to stopping wildfires? Why aren't they buying more water bombers? And somebody pointed out to me today how many water bombers we could have bought with the money we sent to Zelensky to line his pockets.
I just calculated it. It's between 19 to 20 billion dollars that were sent or promised over the past, what is it, since 2022, so over the past 3 years. But that graph is amazing. It shows everything that is responsible for forest fires or wildfires, arson being the number one by a lot. But then what's interesting is that you have things like debris fire, you have things like slash land clearing, you have things like unknown and others that could be anything like forest mismanagement, for example, that we're renowned for not taking care of. So it's Jeff Evely, the guy you were talking about earlier, I've had him on my show. Like, it's somebody that I know. I've recorded a lot of content with him, and I was lucky to have him on my show on Saturday, before the day that it started going crazy. I had his lawyer yesterday because he's going to be represented by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. So Chris Fleury is the name of his lawyer. We had him on the show yesterday. And yeah, it's absolutely insane. 28,800 something. Plus, I don't know if you knew this, but did you know that there's $3,500 of tax and fees on the ticket? Like, not only is it 25 grand, but there's $3,500 of taxes and fees on the ticket itself. But all to say that it was brilliant. He did it on purpose. He's been everywhere from, like, if you look on the media presence, it's absolutely insane. But he is exposing how ridiculous we've become, because this is, and now it's not just Nova Scotia, it's even New Brunswick. And Susan Holst, the premier of New Brunswick, said a few days ago that she was putting a ban on hiking, fishing, and similar to what Nova Scotia did. But then I think it was yesterday or the evening of the day before, she came out to say, you know what, guys, it's not really about hiking. It's really that if you go, it's not that hikers create fires. It's just that if you go hiking and you get injured, our first responders are so busy that they're not going to be able to come and save you. So how is that from, because you've been in politics forever, right? You've been around politics forever. How is it acceptable that somebody can blatantly lie, admit that she lied, and no consequences whatsoever? Like, it's one thing, we all know that politicians lie, but she was caught. She admitted the quiet part out loud, no consequences, no nothing. She's still premier. How's that possible? That blows my mind.
Well, if you ever watch Tennessee Williams' Cat in the Hot Tin Roof, either the movie or the play, there's a great scene where Big Daddy is talking about how mendacity makes the world go around. Mendacity, mendacity. He keeps repeating this line. And mendacity makes politics go around. They're all chronic liars. The difference is they can actually come out 24 hours later and say, hey, guess what? I lied to you. I lied to your face. But it's okay. You expect me to lie to your face. And I was watching a clip the other day of one of the most blatant liars in the political world, and that's Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the UK. He's sitting right next to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump looks him in the eye and says, I hope you're not going to censor my internet. And Keir Starmer giggles and says, we don't censor anything in Great Britain. We have a long history of free speech going, it doesn't say the Magna Carta, but there's a blatant lie. This is after he threw 2,000 plus people in jail for things they wrote on social media. And it's a blatant lie. But I guess the difference today is that they tell the bigger lies. Well, to go back to a very famous German who talked about the big lie, it still works. And the bigger the lie, the more they think they're going to get away with it. And if it doesn't work, they come on and say, yeah, I lied to you. But here, how about this one? I'll tell you another lie today, and maybe that'll satisfy you. And increasingly, it satisfies the mainstream media, which will print anything a politician says without questioning what they're saying, without doing any research, any preliminary question, any kind of inquisitive response is almost too much for them. And it's just like, it's too much work. I'll just print what you say. Just give me the news release. I won't even try to personalize it. I'll just print it as you wrote it. And which, of course, when I was in journalism school, that was a cardinal rule not to do. Never just print a news release. Use it as the basis of a story, but get some answers, interview people, dig. Reporters don't want to dig today. They just want to regurgitate what they're getting from, in the United States, the State Department. In Canada, it's the Prime Minister's office.
It's to me, it's no surprise, because most of the mainstream media in Canada is bought by the Liberals. It's become their propaganda arm, as I like to call it. Like just CBC's what $1.4 billion a year. CTV receives over 100 million. Like there's so much money that they receive on a yearly base that they're just gonna say whatever they're being told. And remember Rosemary when she was told by Carney to look within herself? She's never questioned him ever again. Ever since then, somebody took her into their office and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You got to stop that. Shut up. Just say what we're telling you." And it's working.
That was a threat from Carney.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the kind of veiled threats he gives people. And it sounds like a plea, but it's a threat. And if you don't get what I'm saying, Rosemary, well, maybe you won't be working for CBC much longer.
There's I don't know if you saw the video, but there's a video that came back. I think I saw it yesterday. I talked about it today on my show, but it was an old video of Trudeau back in 2021 where he promised as a election promise, he promised to invest 500 million back in 2021, saying that by the next season, the next wildfire season, so within the next year, so 2022, he would invest $500 million to train more than 1,000 firefighters and buy new water bombers. Yet, as of August 2025, when I looked this morning, Canada's trained 300 firefighters. Since then, 0 new bombers. And yet people, if you go everywhere on X, if you go everywhere on Instagram, people are ripping into me for supporting a guy like Jeff Evely that's the veteran that went and received that $28,000 ticket, saying that if you support Jeff, you're basically against the first responders. And I'm like, are you guys, have you guys been dropped as children? Because those are not me saying that I support. We should give that $500 million to train new firefighters and buy all the water bombers then we need instead of sending that money to overseas. Doesn't mean that I don't support a guy like Jeff Evely for fighting for a constitutional right that is to be able to go into the forest. It's very interesting the way the left is spinning this right now, as in, if I support Jeff Evely, I'm against first responders. What? What does either have to do with each other?
Well, absolutely nothing. And I'm 100% behind Jeff as well, as a fellow veteran. And I know what he's doing here. This is clearly, he's putting himself on the line to prove a political point, and he's doing what a lot of other people could be doing and should be doing perhaps, but he's setting an example the way the Freedom Convoy people did. They set an example. They fought for freedom. And so I'm 100% behind that, because the Freedom Convoy saved lives. God only knows, I laughed when I heard the Premier Sue Holt say, "Yeah, I was only kidding about this. And I thought, as soon as she said, you're not going to get the first responder, I said, hey, this is COVID all over again.
Yep.
You don't take your shots. You don't abide by the lockdown and the mandates. You're not going to get a hospital bed. You're not going to be able to go to work. You're not going to be able to travel because we've got more important things to deal with. And you're not one of them because you're not listening to us. You're not obeying us." So these politicians are so damn arrogant. They got away with it during COVID for quite a while before events overwhelmed them. But here they go again, any opportunity. And they're all the same. We've got red Tories like Tim Houston, who is
a conservative.
A red Tory faux conservative in the same form as Doug Ford. But I hear Tim's got ambition beyond provincial politics. So this is exactly why he's behaving like this. He's trying to appeal to the red Tory wing that unfortunately still exists within the Conservative Party in a large way. And that's what he's up to here. But it amazes me how they just never miss a beat to get back on the lockdown mandate bandwagon. We've got to control people. Got to control the way they and the way they think, the way they act, the way they behave, the way they spend their leisure time, and how they work. And this, to me, and the journalists are always behind it too. Andrew Coyne writes the other day, walking in the woods is not a constitutional right. Well, yeah, and Andrew Coyne's the last person to say freedom of speech is a constitutional right, but we're losing that too. So,
question: there was a great comment I wanted to highlight here by Melissa McDonald saying they are truly testing how far they can take things, and this is my take too. To me, though, I like to call them climate lockdowns because they are trying to see how far they can push us, even as idiotic as it sounds. How many Canadians are going to take it and just go with it? Is that how you see it too?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I think I used the same phrase the other day in one of my broadcasts. Yes, this is a climate lockdown. Yeah. It's an attempt at a climate lockdown. I think the pushback is much more spontaneous this time than it was over COVID. A lot of Canadians have learned their lesson. A lot of Canadians are pushing back. And I think the timing here could not have been worse in terms of the authoritarian left trying to impose their will and their policy, because we just went through the Freedom Convoy trial and the ludicrous idea that peaceful protesters should spend 7 or 8 years in jail. We went through this huge story with Sean Foyt being harassed and literally attacked as he went from the East Coast to Toronto. I interviewed Sean last week, and he said, yeah, I'm coming back to Winnipeg. We're going to fight twice as hard. And what I really admire about what Sean's doing is his Let Us Worship program that is so applicable to Canada, because the churches in Canada became accustomed, they became acclimatized, they became conditioned during the COVID lockdowns to accept whatever the government told them to do, and to accept police invading their church, arresting their pastor, dispersing the congregation. And now they think the police can, and a mayor of Montreal can fine a church for hosting somebody. And I think the timing here is that for anybody who is attuned to the authoritarian decline in Canada, this is another nail in the coffin. And people, so many people are saying, no, we're not going there this time. Don't give us this BS. This has got nothing to do with starting fires, and you know it. This has got everything to do with controlling. And so I think in terms of the authoritarian left, it was bad timing, but that's a good thing.
I agree with you with Sean Foyt. I agree with you that Canadians are too complacent, and even Christians in Canada are way too complacent, just taking it. I spend a lot of my time in Alabama, so very, very different type of Christians down there. But all to say that we need to step it up as Christians. We need to step it up and actually take our rightful place, as in be flipping tables in temples. Like, we need to go back to a time where we're not scared to talk about this stuff, because the Canada that I grew up in, my son will not experience. If we let it continue the way it is now, my son's never going to be able to see the Canada I grew up in. And, before we started recording these podcasts, you and I, we had a conversation, and, it's easy for us to blame the Liberals, to blame 10 years of bad Liberal policies. But if you look at the hiking bans, for example, the Conservatives are not talking about it either. Like, I looked today, I went back 5 days on Pierre Poilievre's posts on his platform. Not one peep. Did not say anything about it. Yet constitutional lawyers after constitutional lawyers are saying that it is an attack on the charters of right, that it is unconstitutional. So why is it, in your experienced opinion, that guys like the Conservative Party of Canada leader, Pierre Poilievre, or even Andrew Scheer, technically he's the leader right now, or the temporary leader, is not talking? Why are they not talking about this?
Same reason he failed to say anything about the Freedom Convoy injustice until literally 24 hours before the sentencing hearing. The same reason he said nothing about Canada signing virtually a clandestine treaty with the World Health Organization, a pandemic treaty. Pierre Poilievre said nothing about that. Absolutely nothing. Pierre Poilievre has failed to comment on Bill C-2, which is coming up, which is a huge surveillance bill. And I think Pierre Poilievre has become conditioned, even though Jenny Byrne announced this week she's on her way out. And I can't say, can't be soon enough. But he was very, very much under Jenny Byrne's spell while she was basically the chief talking point promulgator for the party, and as well as being a campaign manager in his last campaign and Stephen Harper's last campaign. But Pierre Poilievre gets advice from his communications people, and as you said, I was there. I worked on Parliament Hill with these people. Some of them are still around. Jenny Byrne was there when I was there. And the advice the leader of the Conservative Party always gets is don't talk about these contentious issues like globalism. Don't talk about about how the WEF has such power over politicians. And Poilievre used to talk about that at his Axe the Tax rallies just to get a round of applause, because every time he'd say, and I'm not going to allow any of my caucus members to attend the WEF conference in Davos, he got a standing ovation every time he said that. Those are the issues conservative grassroots want him to talk about. They want him to talk about how this country is going farther and farther away from its democratic roots, and it's becoming a party totally captive to globalists. And Poilievre always thinks all you've got to do is talk about those safe streets, those safe communities, and jobs with a powerful paycheck. I'm so sick of hearing that. It's got to be more than just 5 talking points. He's got to talk about the issue, because this country is on the verge of complete economic and political collapse. You talked about remembering a different Canada. When I was talking about this the other day, I mentioned one of the books I had read many years ago by G. Gordon Liddy was called "When I Was a Kid, This Was a Free Country." It's a great book. I know Liddy's controversial. I know Liddy's said some very strange things over the years, but this is a wonderful book because it shows you, and this must be 25 years old now, but even then, it's like the things you can't do anymore, the things you're not allowed to do, or you need approval to do, or you have to get a permit to do. And we're losing the freedom that made this a great country to live in. And I'm not sure Pierre Poilievre gets it at times in terms of when he says, we're going to be the freest country on earth. Well, I don't know how we're going to be the freest country on earth if we sign secret treaties with the World Health Organization, or if we consistently refuse to deal with the real issues in this country, which are encroaching authoritarian rule by governments at the municipal, at the provincial, and at the federal level. And this is absolutely frightening. And I think one of the first things I said was, I bet you Poilievre doesn't comment on this hiking issue, just like he didn't comment on Sean Foyt.
Yep.
Not a word. Not a word. And I tell you, that issue would resonate, and does resonate with the people he expects to vote him in as the next MP from Battle River Crowfoot. That's the kind of people who are excited when somebody stands up and says, we're going to fight this flagrant violation of basic freedom of religion, and we're not going to take this anymore. Not a word from Pierre Poilievre. Once again, I don't think he ever will understand his audience.
Before we do, because I wanted to get your opinion on Pierre Poilievre's by-election that's going on Monday, I saw this comment that I want to address because I absolutely love it. Diane Warmhole is saying that the spiritual warfare is at an all-time high. One of the things that I say all the time is that there is a spiritual war going on, and like it or not, you're involved. And like everything I do comes from my Christian values, and I don't see that from a conservative party either. Like Pierre Poilievre's not a religious guy, definitely not a Christian. And I agree with you. Like you look at Alberta, it's probably the most Christian, arguably the most Christian province in Canada. And as he's going into his by-election on Monday, he's still not beating the right music. Like he's not talking to the people from Alberta. He's still thinking in an Ottawa mindset. Do you think that's going to cost him? Because obviously he's going to win, right? I don't think there's a chance in hell that he's not going to get elected. But do you think he's going to do as well as Kirk?
That's interesting, given the way the votes are going to be counted. I don't think he will, but the spiritual warfare, definitely. I think about the book of Ephesians. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness in high places, and therefore put on the full armor of God. So I very, very much believe that there's a physical world we're fighting, but there's also a spiritual one underlying it. And I'm increasingly believing that it's a difficult place for a Christian to be in politics, because it would seem success only comes to those who have sold their soul. And do I think Poilievre is doing a bang-up job running in the election? I think the smartest thing he did was to talk about this new constitution the other day. I'm sorry, I can't remember
the Sovereignty Act.
The Sovereignty Act. That was the first good thing he's done, actually, to talk about that. A couple of days earlier, I castigated Poilievre when he answered a question about Alberta independence. A woman got up in the audience and said, "Can you explain to me why myself and my family, my children, should want to stay in Canada and not seek an independent Alberta?" Poilievre's answer was so mangled, and I saw so many idiots on YouTube go, "Oh, great job, Poilievre." I thought, what? How stupid! He did a horrible job. He didn't tell that woman or anybody knows why they should stay in Canada. And instead, he related a completely distorted history of Canada over the last 30 years. He somehow thought Brian Mulroney was a savior to conservatives. And as I pointed out, Brian Mulroney created the Reform Party. Brian Mulroney alienated the West. All Brian Mulroney ever cared for was Quebec and Ontario. He had no concern or empathy for Western Canada, to the extent that he created the Reform Party in Preston Manning. Why would Pierre Poilievre forget that? Because he was very much involved in politics as a very young man at that time. And he's old enough to remember that, not just from the history books, which apparently he hasn't read much of lately. Then, of course, the 10 years under Jean Chrétien were also written off by Poilievre as great times for conservatives. If I recall, and I used to write the talking points during the Chrétien years for the Reform, Canadian Alliance, and Conservative Party, we used to call that a decade of despair. And so Poilievre's going on about the great times. It all started to go downhill, of course, under Justin Trudeau. But Alberta was just doing great because it discovered the oil sands. And and we might get a pipeline out of this too. Did some more research, and I reminded myself that Pierre Poilievre never talks about the equalization, especially in Alberta, because he supports it, and he doesn't want to reform it or change it. So I wonder if he's going door to door and he's giving that kind of answer to the people who I know are saying, "Mr. Poilievre, why should we stay in Canada?" If he's coming back with that, and doesn't even bother to touch on the real sore points in Alberta, one of which is equalization, the money that they're forced to ladle up to Ontario and Quebec, these poor have-not provinces, that then spend Alberta's money on social programs, and in the Quebec's case, refuse to dig up the oil under their own soil. That is infuriating to Albertans. And of course, a lot of them are saying, if you listen to people talk, they're saying, I know he's only here to win a seat in the House of Commons. I know we're being used I know he's not going to give a damn once he gets to Ottawa. He's going to be leader of the opposition again. He's going to be living in Ottawa, and he'll be back. We used to have an expression, Nico, Ottawa-washed. I haven't heard it of late, but of course it refers to people who have the best of intentions, the highest ideals, and the greatest principles going to Ottawa and being completely transformed within a couple of years. And they forget all about it. They become part of the Ottawa establishment. You have to remember Pierre Poilievre was in Ottawa for 21 years.
Yep.
And it still sounds like it at times. There's moments when he puts on the mask or takes off the mask. I'm not sure which it is, and he talks directly to the grassroots in a language they understand. But either he leaves the room and his handlers say, "Don't do that again, Pierre, because that's not good for the next election." They're going to eat those. You're going to eat those words, but largely he's still talking to an Ottawa-based constituency. And the people in that riding are as far away from that as you can possibly get in Canada. These are people like the people in South Carolina. These are people like the people of Texas. They are not like the people of Ottawa.
No.
Or Toronto.
No, you're absolutely right. I've traveled all over Canada, all over the US, and Alberta's different. There's something different about Alberta that reminds me more of. I spent a lot of time in Arizona, Texas, Alabama. They remind me more of that. But for the people out there, by the way, just a small pitch for the people out there. If you're liking the conversation, make sure to comment. We want to hear from you. So leave some comments, because I will address some of the comments. And yeah, share the stream. Just if you like it, let us know. We want to hear from you guys. And I got a question. That question's for you. It's one of my listeners. She's very direct, so I'm telling you right now. She asks you, David, you supported him for years, obviously, speaking about Pierre Poilievre, for certain. Why the sudden change?
Well, I supported him in the leadership of the Conservative Party because, frankly, he was the best choice who could actually potentially win an election. There was really nobody else. And at that time, I was very impressed by Pierre Poilievre walking across the street, bringing coffee and donuts to the Freedom Convoy. Yeah, in retrospect, it was probably all a political moment. It was probably all image, because at least he understood at that time who his audience was. He knew he was appealing to the grassroots of the Conservative Party, and he had better start looking like one. As I said, I've known Pierre Poilievre since before he was an MP. That's how long I've known Pierre Poilievre. No, we're not best friends, but if we're in the same room together, yes, I can go up and say hello, and we can chat. And I've followed his political progress over the years, and I was hoping this latest transformation, when he went from a fairly snooty front bench critic in the opposition days of the Conservative Party after the Harper years, where he had some fairly senior portfolios. I was hoping this was a transformation for the good, that this is a real transformation. And I'm still not 100% convinced that in his heart of hearts, he doesn't want it to be a real transformation. But, to answer the question, I'm always hoping Pierre Poilievre will come through for principled conservatives. When he doesn't come through, and that's quite frequently, I have no trouble calling him out for it, because I don't work for Pierre Poilievre. I never have. I never will. But I will support him when he does the right thing. I will applaud him when he says the right thing. And frankly, I can't see anybody else replacing him as Conservative Party leader at this moment. Anybody who's viable to do that. So I'll continue to say he's about the only choice you have, because believe me, Doug Ford would be worse.
Yeesh, yes.
Jason Kenney would be worse. And Jason also wants the job, I can tell you that. And certainly Tim Houston would be worse. But it's my job as a journalist not to be a propagandist, Not every time Pierre says something that I don't like, I'm not going to cover it up or try to find something good to say about it. If it's toxic, I'll call it as I see it. But if he's saying something principled conservatives can agree with, I will applaud him for that. I don't want him to fail. I'll put it that way. I would like to see Pierre Poilievre deliver on what he promised to do when he was running for the Conservative Party leadership. And I would like if he became prime minister and if he defunded or privatized the CBC, I think that would be wonderful. And I give him credit for continuing to talk about that, because that's always been something conservatives talk about and then quietly forget they ever said. Stephen Harper was the same way. Never wanted to talk about privatizing or defunding the CBC after he became prime minister. Before, yes, he was quite willing to talk about that. Not a bad idea at all. But afterwards, no. I think probably it would come through on that particular issue. I think that's a good start. But I wish him success in being a principled conservative. I'm not saying he's going to do it, but I'm not here to tear him down or to try to have him replaced by somebody who's even worse. And just to be an endless critic. I'll be a critic when I have to be and when I should be. But I'll say, good for you, Pierre. You did this one right. But that's what I'm here for. Unfortunately, too many people on YouTube see themselves as Conservative Party candidate propagandists and as Poilievre loyalists to the point that they cannot criticize them. And as I like to point out to people, and I worked on the Hill, I knew politicians from all political parties. I even had friends in the NDP who were human beings. But I can tell you this: never affirm a politician every time he or she opens his or her mouth. They will become megalomaniacs because they feed off affirmation. They feed off your applause. They feed off your love. So they need the broad light of day. And that's what journalists should be giving them. And that's what small c conservatives like you, Nico, and I should be giving the Conservative Party is sunlight, objectivity. And stop telling them they're the greatest thing on earth. Stop telling them that they can do no wrong. Because a politician is always 2 steps away from becoming a full-fledged megalomaniac. And it happens to many of them. They actually begin to believe their own publicity, their own promotion, and it's toxic in the end for everybody because it doesn't do them any good and it doesn't do the country any good. We need clear choices in this country and not the uniparty. And that's what I fear we're becoming. And I'm here to fight that.
Because I agree with you. I'm a small c conservative. I'm not a fan of Pierre Poilievre. I think the Sovereign Bill or the Sovereign Act is the first thing he says in about 6 months that I really agree with, because he's talking about removing Bill C-69. But as you mentioned earlier, he did not address Bill C-2. He's definitely not addressing the hiking bans. He's not addressing anything that would piss off the left, because he's catering, right? He sounds like a uniparty. He sounds like control opposition. He doesn't stand for anything unless it's safe to stand for it. And that bothers me because that's not, I always look at a leader and would I follow them in war? Would I go to war for them? Would they be my leader in war? And I don't see it in him. I don't see it at all. But who else, right? That's always the question, because I don't know who would be a good Conservative Party leader. I just don't see it. They all seem to be diluted. They all seem to be like you called them. How'd you call them earlier? Red conservatives. I like to call them
red Tories or
red
conservatives.
I just like to call them blue liberals, but I don't see it in Canada. I spent too much time in the US where there's actually a difference between the Democrats and the Republican. And here there's not much difference between our liberals and our conservatives. Like our conservatives in the US would be Democrats. They're not real conservatives. They're just on the right side of the left. But what's who in the Conservative Party right now do you see as being a better leader than Pierre Poilievre? Because I don't see it. There's young guys that seems to be up and comers, but they don't seem to be ready to be a party leader. Do you think that it's possible that somebody could rise up from just a commoner, a good old person, a good old Canadian that's just tired of this crap? Is that possible? Do you see that as a
I know
possibility?
of the Conservative MPs I know right now sitting in the House of Commons. I'm really scratching my head in terms of my findings. I like Michael Barrett from Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's fairly principled. He was right on the mark on liberal corruption. I like Michael Cooper. I've known Michael Cooper for years, but he used to come on my show regularly until the party stopped him from coming on my show. I had to get
Of
approval
course.
from the comms people, and we used to have great conversations. And I think Michael's a principled conservative, but he's just so far away from public recognition. He really doesn't have that face recognition, name recognition that you need to win. And there's no point in putting somebody in there who hasn't got a hope in hell of winning an election. And of the front bench people, I mean, I literally cannot think of anybody who I think would do a better job than Poilievre's currently doing. Once I say, like I say, not that he's doing the most outstanding job, but I think he's doing a better job than anybody who could possibly replace him. I think of I know Michelle Rempel used to have ambitions, but I mean Michelle Rempel is all over the map politically, and to the point where I used to talk to Michelle or text Michelle every week when she was immigration critic, and I thought she was doing a great job as immigration critic. Then she went socially way off to the left, and I criticized her in the Western Standard and where I was writing at the time, and she hasn't talked to me since. But I mean, that's how thin-skinned some of these people are. You criticize,
Yeah.
and you're the enemy,
Yep.
and they don't want to talk to you again. And that, by the way, it's as a brief aside. That's one of the principal differences I've known in Canadian politics versus U.S. politics, is that you can be totally at odds with a Republican leader, with a prominent Republican, even a president, and yet time heals all things with Republicans. And a couple of years later, you can be working for within the party, even for that president again. And it's like things are forgiven. In Canada, that just never seems to happen. Once you cross a political leader, and if it's in a column or if it's in an interview that person sees or is shown, it's like the door is never open for you again. And I have seen this with myself, with conservatives I have offended over the years by simply saying what I think is true.
Yep.
And I've seen it with other conservatives slash journalists slash podcasters who have had the door slammed in their face because they have dared to criticize. And it's like that door never opens again. And Canadian politicians are extremely thin-skinned, and they never forgive, and they never forget. And I think that's not a good value to have in a human being or in a politician, because sooner or later you need people again, and sometimes it's the very people that you refused ever to talk to again. So I think that's a bad character trait, but it's very common in Canadian politics. I've seen it so often in my own life and others.
I know you wanted to talk about the BC land grab, but just before you do, I just want to take a couple of the comments, because a lot of people seem to be talking about Jamil Jivani, which, if I'm not mistaken, this is who was pushing to stop the temporary worker visas, which that I agree with. So I guess he could be good. I don't know if you know him, if you know any of him, but people seem to be mentioning him, Brock, Layton, Lanceman, Roman Baber. I don't know. Baber, B-E-B-E-R. I don't know who that is.
Roman Baber. Yeah, he's good. But once again, very, very low name recognition.
Yeah.
Lanceman, Melissa Lanceman. No way. not even.
Aaron Gunn. Aaron Gunn. What do you think? Not enough
better
name.
Melissa Lanceman. Jamil Jivani. Yeah, definitely. And I don't know why I didn't think of him, but once again, he's basically only been there a year. He's not really It's
No.
very unusual for an MP to move into the leadership position after only a year. So the party would not let him win. There's no question about that in my mind. But in terms of being a principal conservative, he's probably the most principal conservative on those
Yeah, I
benches
like
today.
him.
And yeah, he's a good friend of JD Vance.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and he criticized Doug Ford in a way no other conservative had the balls to do during the federal election, and saying, Doug Ford, you've betrayed conservatism
Nice.
by not campaigning for this party, and by campaigning for Mark Carney, you have betrayed conservatism. And I thought, yeah, good for you, Jim. But I probably didn't mention him because he simply hasn't got enough time under his belt to be the leader. And I think he could still do the job, mind you. I don't think you need
Yeah.
25 years. But the Conservative Party, yeah, they think you need 10 or 15 years in the House. So I think that's, but whoever mentioned that, excellent choice. And thank
Yeah.
you for reminding me.
There's a few that it was a few. I like Giovanni as well. The only problem is last time there was a party leadership, it cost 300 grand to enter as a candidate. So that's always a problem. That definitely needs to stop. I don't see why there should be a $300,000 entry fee per candidate, which most people can't afford, especially not commoners. But that being said, I want to keep some time for your BC land grab, because that is definitely something that I am not aware enough. I research everything, and for some reason, that one I never took the time. So you want to enlighten us on what's going on with that BC land grab or private? Because you're talking about the private lands that are now being handed over to First Nations. Is that? I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
decision by the BC Supreme Court to side with four First Nations groups, and I haven't got their names in front of me, but there's four First Nations who essentially demanded that they have a huge piece of Richmond, British Columbia. Yeah, the city of Richmond, including a lot of ports. So the Supreme Court of British Columbia sided with them and essentially has said that Aboriginal entitlement, very interesting word, entitlement. That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's entitlement. Trumps, usurps property rights in this country. This is one of the most dangerous decisions any provincial Supreme Court has ever made. And the problem for me is, even though the BC government is appealing this, the Supreme Court of Canada will probably go in the same direction because it's filled with the same kind of woke judges who seem to think they can just make these comments without having tremendous impact. Now, the BC government is so woke, and they're all for this reconciliation. And now we know what reconciliation means. It means there's a gun at your back, and you're going to have your house and property taken away from you, from people who are essentially looting it from you.
Mm-hmm.
I use strong language here because this is what it's all about. It's about
Yep.
theft. There is no way any Indian band, any First Nations group, anybody in Canada should go to the courts and say, it's my land because this treaty back in 1867 might have suggested it. And it's absolutely disgusting because property rights are foundational and absolutely integral to Western democracies, to economic freedom. You cannot have political or economic freedom without private property. Otherwise, you're a communist state where
Yep.
anybody can come put a gun to your head and take away your house and your property, your land, and your possessions, which you've worked all your life for. If that's the promise unlock the famous Oh, we're back.
Yeah, I think either you or I were frozen. Either or. I'll take the blame. I'm a white Christian, so I'm used to taking the blame. So go ahead. It was my fault
Yeah.
somehow.
Well, and I take this even further. It's not just because of this Aboriginal entitlement, which I don't think should exist anymore.
Mhm.
Let's get on with building a country equal under the law, where every individual is equal under the law. We don't have fiefdoms. We don't have collective rights where
Yeah.
this gang has rights that this other gang doesn't have. Ayn Rand used to talk about this in her philosophical works about the difference between collective rights, which is which gang has the bigger punch, and individual rights, where every individual, every person has the same rights under the rule of law. And that's what is wrong with this whole land claims process, where natives have race based special status.
Yep.
And I remember when the Reform Party came out, one of the first things they said is no more race based fishing, no more race based hunting, no more race based laws in this country. Let's all be equal. And we
Yeah.
wouldn't need a constitutional amendment to get back to normal, to say land claims treaties are over. And we're not going to be bartering anymore. We're all in this together, whether you're native or non-native, whether you're black or whether you're white, whether you're French or whether you're English speaking. We are all equal under the law, and let's get on with it. I've said for years, scrap the reserve system. It benefits nobody but the chiefs who are
Yep.
skimming the profits, who are taking the profits, who are taking the money, leaving their people in poverty, drug addicted, leaving their people without clean water. But they can always point their finger at the federal government. Oh, it's their fault,
They're not
even
giving
though
us enough.
they're not giving us enough billions of dollars a year. Yes, and they'll take the money and they'll keep taking the money. And natives don't need more government largesse. These people can work and function in this country just like everybody else. Indigenous people have the same skills, the same intelligence, the same work drive, the same drive to succeed as any Canadian has. And I've always said, get rid of this reserve system because it's nothing more than apartheid. It is nothing more than a racist system of separating the natives from the rest of the country, and it's been going on far too long. Scrap the reserve system. It's inherently racist, and it's nothing more than apartheid.
So I was going to take the question from Bumpy and ask you, but I think you pretty much answered it. Bumpy Johnson wanted to know, so David wants to get rid of the Indian Act. Pretty safe to say that that's what you're saying, right?
I'm saying it wouldn't take a constitutional amendment to do that. Why is it everything else? Well, not everything, but why is it that we can recognize when policies don't work and they should be either reformed or scrapped? Why are we afraid to admit the reserve system has never worked for Indigenous people? It works very well for the chiefs who have profited off it for decades. It doesn't work well, and we hear about it all the time. Why are people suffering from malnourishment, from lack of clean drinking water? Why is unemployment 60%? Why is there nothing but impoverishment and hopelessness on these reserves? Well, obviously it's not working. It never has worked. It's time to get past the 19th century and into the 21st century and allow natives to succeed in the same way that every other Canadian can. And as long as we keep looking at Indigenous people as wards of the state, as people who require government assistance at every turn, they will never be allowed to succeed and to realize their full potential. And that's why I've said for years, I have fought for equality for First Nations people my whole life. And that equality means ending the reserve system and allowing natives to compete with every other Canadian and to stop doling out land and doling out money and taking it now from people who have earned it, who have paid for it, who have paid taxes on it. Because when you take a little piece of Richmond and say, belongs to this group of people over here now, sorry, you're going to have to get out of your house. And where does this end? The reason the BC government is appealing even though they have supported this nonsense for years, is because people will not be moving to BC if they think their house might be taken away. Businesses will leave BC because they think, well, what if my business is on a disputed section of land? It is absolutely catastrophic for the province. And even the ultra left woke government of the NDP government of BC, of David Eby, Premier David Eby, is fighting this because they know it's going to be the death of the province if they don't. Even though I don't think their heart's really in it, because they really probably think it's a good idea.
They're protecting
all
themselves.
Of these people. Yeah, exactly.
You know, one of the ways I like to explain this is, if it was white people doing it, would you be okay with it? If it was white people taking land from native, from blacks, from whatever different culture, would it be okay? If your answer is no, then don't be a hypocrite and call a spade a spade. We're supposed to be the same. One Canadian's supposed to have one vote. One's supposed to be equal to the other, but obviously in those situations, clearly, some people are more equal than others.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's the old Animal Farm axiom. Some Canadians are more equal than others. Yeah.
What a great book, huh? George Orwell did good. He did good.
Always ahead of his time philosophically. So prescient, so prophetic, and I was watching this thing today, Nico, from on Redacted, a show I guest on every week to talk about Canadian news. They did a piece on the UK, and the UK, of course, is going downhill at a faster rate than even Canada is, with the total abolition of free speech, people being thrown in jail for things they write on the internet. But there's a new law coming where men are not allowed to stare at women.
Yes. I was just going to
say
that.
This?
I was just watching it earlier today. Yep.
And I'm thinking, how can a country that produced some of the funniest comedy, and I'm thinking the Carry On movies and Faulty Towers, Hello, Benny Hill. It was all ribald comedy, sometimes a little tasteless, but the Brits never took themselves this seriously. Now they want to throw people in jail for looking a little longer than they should at a beautiful woman on the street, and perhaps asking for her phone number. It is absolute insanity, but that's the way the Western world is going. It's just anything you think is crazy, well, let's do it.
I'm a gym rat. I've been going to the gym for 20 years, and that's something that I see even here. You see women wearing literally nothing, filming themselves on their tripod as they're working out. And if a guy has the audacity to just little glimpse, we get recorded, we get put on the internet everywhere, we get called all the names possible because we did. So that's what you're describing. Is it the video with the two undercover cop? The two women that are running, and they're like, oh, if you whistle at us, if you look at us too long, there's a police car somewhere that's going to pull you over. Like, seriously? They're half dressed. One of the two women's in a tank top with little shorts, and she looked like a good looking woman. You think that guys are not going to look? Really?
Yeah.
We live in a strange world, and this is coming here. You know that any chance Mark's Carney get to bring that stuff here, he's going to do it. He's such a big fan of the UK, so it's just a matter of time if we're not careful.
Oh, yeah, and I predict he's going to change the name of the Online Harms Act, which, of course, we've talked about, to the Online Safety Act, as it's called in the UK. And just because I think the Online Harms Act got a lot of bad press, thanks to people like you and I, but I think he'll change the name because it's the UK thing to do, and because it sounds even more safe as the Online Safety Act.
And it's all about protecting children. It's all about protecting. Let's give your rights away in order to protect children.
Yeah. Even though we already have laws doing that, and so it's a complete camouflage. It is just gaslighting, and it drives me crazy that so many Canadians think this has anything to do with protecting children, because it doesn't. It has everything to do with taking our basic human rights away and our basic freedom of speech away. And that's Mark Carney. He is, as you pointed out in the first episode we did, Nico, he is a highly intelligent man. Oh, yeah. He is so adept and is so adroit at covering his tracks and at appearing to be something he isn't. He does a metamorphosis constantly, and there's at least 3 or 4 Mark Carneys out there, and he markets the Mark Carney that is most suitable to the current hour, to the present. And right now, it's the Mark Carney that is really couldn't give a damn about dealing with Donald Trump because he's just beyond that sort of thing, but has got some sort of small c conservative idea in mind to bring Canada back to some kind of economic stability. And of course, this Mark Carney is as unreal as every other incarnation he's ever had. Mark Carney is all about power. That's all Mark Carney really cares for.
Just read his book. There's a good reason why I call him Marx Carney. He references Karl Marx at least, I think it was 48 times. I calculated it 48 times in his book. He's very smart. You listen, just listen, read it, listen to it, whatever. Just read it. He is brilliant. He plays dumb, but he ain't dumb. I wish he was like Trudeau, but he's not. He's actually clever. So he is a dangerous man. He scares the hell out of me. But yeah, for the people out there, don't underestimate Mark Carney and read his book. You'll understand the type of individual that he is. But I want to thank you for your time today. Always a blast talking to you. And I don't know if you have a word of ending, if there's some type of wisdom that you want to leave us on, but I will leave you the floor to close it.
Well, as we were talking earlier about Sean Foyt he's coming back to Winnipeg, even though Winnipeg, like every other Canadian city, has said, we don't want you here. The only Canadian city that wants him is Edmonton. And I got to take my hat off to an old friend. We knew each other at the Calgary Herald, and that's Premier Danielle Smith. I think she is, as I said the last time we talked, she is leading the conservative movement in Canada. And thank God there's one premier in this country who has the guts, the moxie to say this is still a Christian country. This is still a Christian province. And Sean Foyt is welcome on the steps of our legislature. Thank God for people like Danielle Smith. And thank God for Sean Foyt, who coming back to Canada to tell us, don't give up, keep fighting, keep pushing back, keep insisting that Christians have rights too, that we're not going to be excluded. We're not going to go in the closet. We're not going to go into hiding. We're going to continue to fight until we take back this country, if there's any country to take back. But I'm going to go down fighting, not on my knees. I'm going to go down fighting.
Amen. Have a good night, guys.
You too. Thank you so much, Nico. Bye for now. Bye.